Most people know Cain, who is considered the world's first murderer, at least according to the story in the Bible. This is a character consumed by envy and hatred toward his brother Abel, who lured him out to the field and murdered him. This story makes us believe that after Abel's death, only 3 people remained on earth: Cain, his father Adam, and his mother Eve. Then the atmosphere sank into a dreadful silence, as Abel's death became an unsolved mystery, with no one knowing who had committed such a heinous crime. Or to be more precise, who was the one who used the smoky stone, that mysterious weapon, to strike? This question not only troubles us, but also forces us to confront the harsh truth about the monsters in human form living among us. In these parts of the story, the biblical God is portrayed as an active figure. He knows full well that Cain is the murderer and has decreed that Cain must live as a perpetual wanderer. The image of an eternal wanderer upon the earth is indeed a notion both fascinating and thought-provoking, especially for one like Cain, a man burdened with the capacity for murder. However, this is frequently questioned by readers and scholars. Many people debate whether this also means Cain possesses immortality. Will Cain still appear in events after stepping into the new century? And who knows, perhaps Cain is still quietly wandering somewhere on earth today. Today, we will analyze both sides of the issue and review some rather divergent, controversial viewpoints that have been raised in discussions about Cain's potential immortality. The important thing is that we need to clearly understand the story in Genesis. This passage describes in detail the punishment that Cain had to bear. When Lord Trok Nguyen Tan discovered Abel's body, he accused Cain of being the murderer. Now you are cursed and banished from this land. Life has opened its maw to receive your brother's blood from your very hands. When people no longer care for the land, it will no longer grant them bountiful harvests. They will become wanderers, adrift in this world. Upon hearing this, Cain sighed and lamented that this punishment was beyond his endurance. He also pointed out that this punishment was unjust, as not only was he expelled from his home, but he was also threatened with being killed by anyone who encountered him. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over. 7 times like that. Then the Lord placed a mark on Cain so that no one could find and kill him. We don't truly know what happened to Cain afterward, for the Bible only mentions him briefly before falling silent, revealing no further details about his fate. However, we all know that Cain's wandering journey led him to the land of Nod, said to lie east of Eden. Later, we found out that Cain had gotten married and had a son named Enoch. Before commencing the construction of a city of the same name, Enoch. Here, scholars unanimously agree that Cain's wandering journey has come to an end. After starting a family and building the city, Cain likely settled down there naturally. Though he could not be killed due to the mark God had given him, Cain still faced old age, the inevitable fate that awaited him. You will realize that the mark God placed on Cain ensured no one could kill him. At the very least, no one dared to try. But that did not save him from hunger, ward off illness, or prevent death when old age came upon him. It's also possible that Cain died in an unexpected accident. This was later mentioned in the book Subalos, where Cain's death could have been the result of a natural disaster or an unexpected accident. Another hypothesis suggests that because the event of Cain killing his brother happened too long ago and because he himself was beginning to reach his peak, perhaps Cain had changed and learned to repent for his sins. With this, the God in the Bible allowed Cain to stabilize his life and gradually erase his mark, freeing him from the fate of immortality. These ideas all align with the conclusion that Cain may no longer exist in this world. Either died of old age or met some other tragic end that the Bible deemed unworthy of mention. One of the main reasons Cain could not endure and survive through the ages was the great flood event mentioned in the Bible. As recorded in chapter 6 of the book of Genesis, the great flood swept away everything. All creatures in the heavens, on earth, and all of humanity at that time were deemed wicked and beyond redemption. Only Noah and his family were chosen to survive, and only the creatures aboard his vessel were fortunate enough to escape. Since the Bible does not mention Cain in the story of the great flood, it can be inferred that if Cain was still alive by that time, he would have perished in the flood. On the other hand, some believe in the theory that Cain still lives and wanders the earth to this day. Because the Bible does not clearly state who killed him or how he died. A notable point is that many people often misinterpret the mark that God placed on Cain as a symbol of immortality. It can be said that Cain became immortal, or at least no one dared to try killing him after witnessing God's mark. TB said that he. However, there remains a hypothesis that Cain still wanders the earth to this day, and some interpretations of this are quite unique. One hypothesis suggests that after killing Abel, Cain wandered to the land of Nod. Cain kept going until he finished building the city of Enon. After that, he wandered on for a while longer before fading into the darkness, where he could change his identity or vanish completely, leaving no trace behind. This could be a reasonable explanation, but it's still not enough to unravel the mystery of the Great Flood. How could Cain have survived the Great Flood, when that deluge was created precisely to wipe out beings like him? To answer this question, proponents of this theory return to the hypothesis of the mark and once again assert that it was ironically this very mark that protected Cain. Thanks to this theory, Cain likely survived the Great Flood and continued to walk in the New World, where memories of him had faded from most people's minds. But for those who wish to take this story literally, there is a theory that Cain existed beyond the pages of the Old Testament, to the extent that he may still be alive somewhere today. Of course, with this concept, we must understand that the characters described here are entirely real and the events in the Bible are historically authentic. From this, some proponents of this theory suggest that Cain may have been a homeless wanderer, constantly roaming and trapped in a life dependent on the pity of others and endless hardships. The proponents of this theory have attempted to use the very words in God's original statement to reinforce the view that when Cain tills the soil, the land will no longer yield its produce. Thus, no matter how hard Cain tried to find food or improve himself, all his efforts were in vain. If this theory is correct, then it's not hard to believe that Cain disguised himself as a homeless person or wanderer in the modern century. If the Lord's curse truly prevented Cain from obtaining clothes, food, money, or any other basic necessities for survival, it is very likely that Cain would have fallen into such a predicament. Another hypothesis suggests the complete opposite, that Cain was part of the elite, possibly even the leader. And who knows, he might be the one ruling the world from the shadows, especially when you consider just how long he could live. Perhaps Cain possesses more skills and talents than anyone before him. He will have 1,000 years to ponder human psychology, master military strategy, hone self-defense skills, and even uncover dark arcane arts from ancient times. We all understand that, for an immortal being under this theory, it is easy to imagine them rising to the top of the world's hierarchy within the first few millennia and maintaining that position forever after. A more intriguing hypothesis suggests that some research groups believe Cain is actually the Sarkok creature or Bigfoot, living in seclusion within caves in the wilderness, completely isolated from human civilization. In the book Jaxer, a Hebrew didactic work from the 17th century, the author presents additional, sometimes controversial, perspectives on Cain's death, recounting an alternative version that sheds light on the event. The story goes that after Cain was exiled, Lamech, a blind biblical figure, went hunting with his son named Tubal-Cain. While hunting, Shalon was startled to see a strange shape on the horizon and immediately shouted for his father to shoot. Once again, Lamech became a blind hunter fixated on his target, and Cain's heart was what he sought. Here, Cain died from his wounds, showing that the mark of God did not spare him from death. At the same time, it could also serve as a clear warning to anyone who sees him. Killing him would be an unwise move. Finally, the Lord said to Cain that whoever killed him would suffer vengeance sevenfold. Therefore, perhaps when people saw Cain, they would choose to keep their distance rather than dare to harm him. Another hypothesis in the Book of Zubiels, an ancient Jewish text from Pogvo, claims that Cain died when his house collapsed. According to the story, Cain was cursed by the gods for killing his brother Abel with a stone. And he himself was also struck down by a stone in the fair trial. We all know that it was you who used a stone to kill Abel, and then by a stone, you were justly judged and slain. Whether you support any particular viewpoint, the idea of Cain still being alive and wandering the earth remains an incredibly fascinating topic. The Bible primarily notes that Cain's lifespan is not clearly specified. We were never told about his death, so his fate remains a mystery forever. The idea of Cain's eternal exile remains a compelling theological theme in discussions. The passage reflects deeper questions about sin, divine punishment, and justice. The story of Cain, a pivotal and enigmatic figure in the Bible, always leaves readers deep in thought. always sparks lively and captivating debates. Despite the countless different theories about Cain's fate, from the fact that he was still drifting through life to the revelation that he had been dead all along. At the moment, we still cannot provide an exact answer. The Bible does not detail Cain's death, leaving room for much intriguing speculation and exploration. Though a murderer, Cain was still marked by God with a special sign. He was not killed by others, yet he could not escape death. This mark can be seen as a protective layer, and at the same time, a warning to anyone who intends to harm him. However, that doesn't mean Cain is completely free from all dangers. It is the drifting wanderlust, the solitude, and the resilience to steadfastly face the sufferings of human existence. This turned the character into a symbol of eternal punishment, an indelible mark through the years. Among the various theories about Cain, some suggest he may have become a deeply enigmatic figure. Like Sarkok or Avosaku, he might even be one of the long-lived, and become the world leader. All affirm one truth: the existence of Cain and the punishment he must bear. This is not just a story about a criminal, but it also raises deeper issues on justice, forgiveness, and how to face sin in the eyes of God. We realize that, whether Cain was cursed or protected, living in constant unease, never a moment of peace. The prolonged debate over Cain's fate reflects the complexity of explaining the stories in the Bible. Is Cain an immortal being, a wanderer with no end to his journey throughout life? Or merely a symbol of divine punishment that humanity has yet to fully comprehend? Nevertheless, the story of Cain remains a profound warning about the consequences of sin. Ultimately, exploring Cain's story not only allows us to gain a deeper understanding of this character. Not only that, it also extends to issues such as morality, sin, and responsibility in everyday life. No matter which theory you believe in, the story of Cain always holds a significant place in theological and philosophical discussions throughout the many centuries that followed.